The tomato plants needed water again. Walter Hayes wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the soil with his fingers dry as dust, just like yesterday. Station Amara's climate control system never quite got the humidity right for his greenhouse, but he made it work anyway. 15 years of growing earth vegetables in a metal box floating above a gas giant had taught him patience. His back ached as he filled the watering can from the recycling tap. Getting old, he thought, 53 years, and his knees reminded him every morning. But this place, his little greenhouse on the station's upper deck, made everything worthwhile. Carrots, lettuce, beans, and those stubborn tomatoes. Real food, not the synthetic paste most species ate out here. The sun lamps clicked off automatically as evening cycle began. Walter stretched and surveyed his work. Another good day. Pepper plants were finally flowering, and the cucumber vines had spread across their trellis exactly how he wanted. He grabbed his jacket from the hook and prepared to head back to his quarters. That a sound stopped him, soft, barely there, like something scraping against metal. Walter turned slowly. His eyes scanned the shadowy corners of the greenhouse. The compost bin sat against the far wall, and something moved behind them, something small that he didn't call out. Years of dealing with station wildlife had taught him better. Rats, escape pets, sometimes even small aliens looking for food. Whatever it was, panic would only make it harder to deal with. Instead, he walked to his storage cabinet and pulled out his dinner. Vegetable stew he made yesterday, still sealed in his container. Fresh bread from the station bakery. He set both on the workbench near the compost bins, then moved to the opposite side of the greenhouse. The scraping sound came again. Walter pretended not to notice, focusing on trimming dead leaves from his bean plants, but he watched from the corner of his eye. Got a head emerged, small, covered in scales that caught the dim light. Definitely not a rat. Walter kept working. His heart beat faster, but his hand stayed steady. The creature looked young, maybe a child. Its scales were dull gray-green, not the vibrant colors he'd seen on adult Draken who passed through the station, and it was thin, too thin. The child crept forward, eyes fixed on the food. It moved like a wounded animal, ready to bolt at any moment. Walter hummed softly an old earth song his mother used to sing. Nothing threatening, just noise to show he was still there. The child grabbed the bread container and vanished behind the bins again. Walter smiled, hungry. Not dangerous, he could work with that. He cleaned his tools and organized seed packets, giving the child time. When he finally left for the night, he made sure to leave the side door unlocked just in case. The next evening, Walter brought 2 dinners. He set one on the workbench again, same spot as before. The other he ate slowly at his potting table, making normal sounds, chewing, drinking water, setting his spoon down. The child appeared faster. This time, it snatched the food and retreated, but not as far. Walter saw its eyes more clearly now, golden-like honey, smart eyes, watching everything. This pattern continued for days. Walter brought food. The child took it. Gradually, the distance between them shrank. Walter noticed the child's scales growing brighter, healthier. Good nutrition making a difference. Out on the 6th day, the child stayed visible. While eating, it sat on a bag of potting soil, tearing into the bread Walter had brought. Walter worked on repotting it. Strawberry plants, giving the child Space but staying present, those. Strawberries are tricky, he said. Quietly, not looking directly at the child, need the right balance of water and sun, too much of either and they die. The child's chewing slowed. It was listening, kind of like people, I guess. Walter continued, pressing soil around a plant. We all need the right balance of things, food, water, safety, a place to rest. He glanced up briefly. The child was staring at him now, bread forgotten in its hands. You're welcome here, Walter said simply, no pressure, just saying. The child blinked those golden eyes. It finished eating in silence, but it didn't run away when Walter moved closer to water the plants. Progress. 2 weeks passed. The child came every evening now, arriving before Walter finished his work. It watched him garden, sometimes tilting its head when he explained what he was doing. Walter talked more, filling the silence with gentle chatter about plants and soil and growth point. One evening he found scratches on an empty clay pot, letters, rough but clear. Edia Lyra. Walter said aloud, testing the name. That's pretty. I am Vault V. The child. Lyra made a sound, not quite a word, but acknowledgement. Walter smiled and went back to his weeding. Names were important. Names meant trust. The breakthrough came 3 weeks after their first meeting. Walter was harvesting lettuce, carefully cutting leaves and placing them in his basket. He felt a presence beside him and looked down. Lyra stood there, hand outstretched. She wanted to help. Sure, Walter said, keeping his voice soft. Take the outer leaves first like this. Leave the center so it keeps growing. Small-scaled hands mimicked his movements, clumsy at first, then more confident. They worked together in comfortable silence, and when Walter handed her the basket to carry, Lyra took it without hesitation. That night when Walter prepared to leave, Lyra didn't hide. She followed him to the door, then stopped. You can stay, Walter offered. There's a space behind the tool shed, warm and dry. Safe. Lyra looked at the space, then at Walter. She stepped inside the greenhouse fully, letting the door close behind her. Walter nodded. Good night, Lyra. See you tomorrow. As he walked back to his quarters, Walter felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose beyond plants and soil. Someone needed him, and he had helped to give. Nothing complicated about it, just simple human kindness meeting simple need. Tomorrow he'd bring extra blankets. Morning light filtered through the greenhouse panels, artificial but warm enough. Walter arrived early, carrying a backpack full of supplies. Blankets like he'd promised, also a pillow, some dried fruit, and a water bottle that sealed properly. Lyra sat among the tomato plants, awake and alert. She watched him approach. Those golden eyes, less fearful than before but still cautious. Trust was growing, but slowly. Walter understood. Slow growth. His whole life revolved around it. Brought you some things, he said, unpacking the backpack. Figured you might want something softer than potting soil to sleep on. Lyra reached out and touched the blanket. Her scaled fingers traced the fabric carefully, as if she'd never felt anything quite like it. Maybe she hadn't. Walter didn't know much about Drake and culture, only what he'd observed from the few adults who passed through the station. They always seemed formal, distant, never saw any children with them. He showed her the water bottle, demonstrating how the cap twisted. Lyra copied him, opening and closing it several times, learning You're a quick study, Walter said. That's good, smart is good. Over the following weeks, the greenhouse became their shared space. Lyra learned the routines, watering schedules, feeding, times for the plants, when to harvest, and when to let things grow. She had gentle hands despite the scales, and the plants responded well to her care. Walter taught her galactic common properly, going beyond the few words she knew. She was hungry for language, repeating phrases until she got them right. Her voice was rough and used to speaking, but determined. Why do plants need darkness? She asked one evening. Her comment improving daily. They need rest just like us, Walter explained. Growth happens, but so does recovery. Too much sun burns them out. Lyra absorbed this information silently. Walter noticed she did that often, taking time to think before responding. Thoughtful kid, Walter, she said. Finally, why you help me? It was the first personal question she'd asked. Walter set down his pruning shears and gave her his full attention. Because you needed help and I had help to give. He said simply, that's how humans work. We see someone hurting, we try to help. Doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Other species not do this, some do, but humans, we're kind of known for it. We're stubborn about caring for others even when it doesn't make logical sense. Lyra tilted her head. Considering is logical to me. Walter smiled. Yeah, kid, me too, but their peaceful routine couldn't last forever. Station Amara was small and people noticed things, especially people like Security Officer Ramos, who made it his business to know everything happening on his watch. That he appeared one afternoon while Walter was teaching Lyra about composting. Hey, Ramos said, standing at the greenhouse entrance. Got a minute? Walter's stomach tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Sure. What can I do for you? There have been reports of an unauthorized resident this section. Someone living where they shouldn't be. Ramos's eyes scanned the greenhouse. You seen anything unusual? Define unusual, Walter said. I see weird stuff every day. Yesterday a Quellen tried to eat my cabbages behind a stack of seed trays. Lyra had gone perfectly still. Walter could feel her fear from across the room. I mean someone living here, staying past their station clearance. Someone young. Walter frowned, playing confused like a kid. Haven't seen any human kids up here in months. Most families stick to the lower decks where the schools are. Ramos studied him carefully. Not necessarily human. Well, I keep to myself mostly. Head down, grow my plants. If there's a kid in trouble somewhere, seems like that's more your area than mine. It wasn't quite a lie. Walter was good at telling truths that didn't reveal everything. Ramos lingered a moment longer, then nodded. Right, well, keep your eyes open. Command wants this sorted. After he left, Walter waited a full minute before speaking. He's gone. Lyra, you're safe. She emerged slowly, shaking. They look for me. Who's they? Everyone. Her voice cracked. I cannot go back. Walter knelt down to her level. Hey, look at me. This greenhouse is sanctuary. You understand that word? It means safe space, protected space. You're protected here. You promise? I promise. Nobody takes you anywhere you don't want to go, not while I'm breathing. Lyra threw her arms around his neck and Walter hugged her back carefully. She was so small, all sharp angles and scales, but she held on like he was the only solid thing in her universe. Maybe he was. That night, Walter created a proper hiding spot Behind his tool shed, he reinforced the walls, added a lamp for reading, hung the blankets to make it feel less like storage space and more like a room. Lyra watched him work, sometimes handing him tools. Why they want to find me, she asked quietly. Don't know your story yet, Walter said, hammering a nail. But I figure you'll tell me when you're ready. Until then doesn't matter. You want to be here, you stay here. My family, she started, then stopped. Yeah. They not understand. They want me be something I'm not ready for. Too much pressure, too much eyes watching. I cannot breathe there. Walter paused his work. So you left. I ran, I hide. Think maybe better I disappear than fail everyone. Oh kid. Walter sat down beside her. That's a heavy weight for someone your size. Nobody should have to carry that alone. In my culture we carry alone. We be strong alone. Emotion is weakness. Well, that's nonsense, Walter said bluntly. Humans figured out a long time ago that strength comes from connection, not isolation. We survive because we help each other, not despite it. Lyra looked at him with those golden eyes, and Walter saw hope there, maybe even belief. You really think I'm safe here? I know you're safe here, and tomorrow we're going to plant those new cucumber seeds. They'll need both of us to do it right. Lyra nodded slowly. Both of us. I like that. Me too, kid, me too. The greenhouse door opened before Walter even touched the control panel. That should have been his first warning, and 5 figures stood outside, blocking the morning light, tall, covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed purple and silver. Draken, but not like any he'd seen on the station before. These were warriors, their scales polished and their weapons obvious, even holstered. At Walter's heart hammered, but he forced himself to stay calm. Can I help you, gentlemen? The leader stepped forward, removing his helmet. His scales were deep blue, marked with scars that spoke of long service. I am General Taus of the Royal Guard. We need to inspect this facility. This is private property, Walter said, blocking the entrance. You need a warrant from Station Command. We have authority that supersedes Station Command. Torres held up a data tablet showing official seals. Walter didn't recognize but looked important. We are searching for someone, a child. Walter's mouth went dry. Look, I don't know what you think is going on here, but this is just a greenhouse. I grow vegetables. That's all. Then you will not mind us looking? It wasn't a question. Point 4. Armed guards moved past Walter before he could protest further. They spread through the greenhouse with military efficiency, checking behind planners and underts. Walter's mind raced. Lyra was here somewhere. She had to be. She always came early now, helping him prepare for the day. Taurus walked slowly through the rows of plants, his experienced eyes missing nothing. He stopped at the tool shed where Walter had built Lyra's sleeping space. General, one of the guards called here. Walter's stomach dropped. They'd found her. Lyra crouched behind a stack of grow lights, making herself as small as possible. Her eyes were wide with terror, and for a moment Walter saw her as she'd been that first night, scared, alone, desperate. Please, Walter said quickly, don't hurt her. She hasn't done anything wrong. Taurus stared at Lyra for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He knelt down, making himself less threatening. Princess Lyra, your father has been searching for you. Princess, the word hit Walter like a physical blow. You are unheard? Taurus asked, his voice gentler than Walter expected from a warrior. Lyra said nothing, just pressed herself harder against the wall. Walter moved beside her instinctively, placing himself between the child and the soldier. She's fine, she's safe, she's been here with me. Taurus stood slowly, his full attention now on Walter. You are the human who has been harboring her. I've been feeding a hungry kid who showed up at my door, didn't know she was royalty. She was starving, scared, and alone. What was I supposed to do? Turn her away? You were supposed to report her to authorities immediately. Do you understand the chaos her disappearance has caused? The Dream Empire has been searching for 3 months. We suspected kidnapping, assassination, political conspiracy. We nearly went to war with the Quellan Alliance over this. Walter's mouth opened, then closed. 3 months, VA. He looked at Lyra, who had tears running down her scaled face. I'm not kidnapped, Lyra said softly. Her first words to the soldiers. I ran away. Taurus's expression shifted. Pain, recognition, understanding. He'd suspected. Walter realized, maybe even known. Why? Taurus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Because I cannot be what they want. Because mother died and father has no time for grief, only duty. Because everyone watches and judges and expects. And I just want to breathe. The words poured out of Lyra. 3 months of silence breaking. I choose exile with human who shows kindness over palace, with no room for weakness. The other guards shifted uncomfortably. This was clearly not a conversation they were trained for. Taurus closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked tired. You are fourth in line to the throne. Your duty is to be strong. Yes, I know, but I'm not strong enough. Better I disappear than shame family. Oh, Lyra, Taurus said, and there was genuine sadness in his voice. Your mother's daughter, she would never think. You brought shame, she not here to say. So Walter had heard enough. With respect, General, she's a child who lost her mother and couldn't handle the pressure. That's not shameful. That's normal, that's healthy. Even you do not understand our culture, human. Maybe not, but I understand grief and I understand kids, and right now I'm seeing a child who needs compassion, not judgment. Taurus studied Walter carefully. You knew she was highborn. I knew she was running from something. Figure it was family trouble. Didn't need details to know she needed help, and you just gave it. No questions, no demands. That's what humans do. We see someone hurting, we help. Novel concept. I know, one of the guards muttered something in the Dream language. Taurus silenced him with a gesture. I must take her back. Taurus said, her father, High King Draven, must know she lives. Empire must know. And then what? Walter demanded. She goes back to the same situation that made her run. Nothing changes. That is not my decision to make. Lyra stood up slowly, resignation in every movement. She looked at Walter with those golden eyes, and he saw acceptance there. She'd known this would happen eventually. It okay, Walter. I knew I cannot hide forever. The hell? It's okay. You're just going to accept this, going back to a place that made you so miserable you'd rather starve in. A greenhouse is my duty. You're a child. Your duty is to be a child. Taurus watch this exchange with interest. Human, what is your name? Walter Hayes. Walter Hayes, you have protected a princess of the Draken Empire for 3 months. You fed her, sheltered her, asked nothing in return. This is not insignificant. wasn't trying to be significant, was just trying to help. Yes, I see that. Taurus looked at Lyra. Then back at Walter. Princess, would you feel safe if this human accompanied us to the flagship to meet your father? Lyra's head snapped up. Walter comes if he agrees. His perspective may prove valuable. Walter didn't hesitate. Where she goes, I go. Someone needs to speak for her. Taurus nodded slowly. Very well, we depart within the hour. Bring whatever you need. As the guards filed out to prepare, Taurus lingered. Human kindness, I have heard of it but rarely seen it so purely demonstrated. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach. Not wisdom, Walter said, just basic decency. To us that is wisdom. The transport shuttle vibrated with the hum of engines. Walter sat beside Lyra, her small hand gripping his tightly. Through the viewport station, Amara grew smaller, replaced by the massive shape of the Draken flagship. It looked like a weapon, all sharp angles and dark metal. Taurus sat across from them, watching quietly. The other guards maintained respectful distance, but Walter felt their eyes. He was probably the first human most of them had met, certainly the first one bringing uncomfortable questions to their king. Tell me about den children, Walter said, breaking the silence. How are they raised? Tourists seemed surprised by the question, but answered, we train them young. Discipline, strength, control, emotion is a luxury we cannot afford in positions of power. Why not? Because rulers must be strong, unwavering. The people need to see strength, not weakness, and grief is weakness to you. Grief is indulgent. It serves no purpose. Walter shook his head. That's where you're wrong. Grief serves a huge purpose. It's how we process loss, how we honor what we've lost, how we eventually heal. You can't just skip it and expect everything to be fine. Yes, we cry, we talk, we remember. We let ourselves feel the pain because that's the only way through it. Try to go around it just means it catches up. Later, Lyra squeezed his hand. She'd been silent since leaving the greenhouse, but Walter felt her attention on every word. The princess lost her mother 4 months ago, Taurus said quietly. The queen was beloved. Her death was unexpected, and Lyra was expected to just carry on. No time to process, no space to grieve. She had duties, public appearances. The empire needed to see stability. She was a child who lost her mother. The empire could wait. Taurus had no answer for that. They docked with the flagship and the scale of it became clear. Corridors stretched endlessly, filled with soldiers and officials moving with purpose. Everything was cold metal and harsh lights. No warmth anywhere. Walter understood why Lyra had run 2 royal advisors met them, both elderly green, with elaborate scale patterns marking their age and status. They looked at Walter like he was something unpleasant. They'd stepped in. The human is not necessary for this reunion, one said too. Taurus, send him back. High King Draven approved his presence. Taurus replied calmly, the king does not understand what this human represents. A security failure, a diplomatic embarrassment. He represents. Taurus interrupted. Reason, Princess Lyra still lives. Perhaps we should be grateful rather than critical. The advisors had no response to that, but their disapproval was obvious. They led the group deeper into the ship toward the royal quarters. Lyra's grip on Walter's hand became painful, but he didn't complain. She needed an anchor right now. The throne room doors open with hydraulic hisses. Inside, the space was huge and empty, designed to make visitors feel small. At the far end on a raised platform sat High King Draven. He was massive even by Dreen standards. His scales were deep, crimson marked with gold, and his presence filled the room. But Walter saw past the intimidation. He saw a father whose eyes locked onto his daughter with desperate relief. Lyra, the king's voice carried across the space. Lyra let go of Walter's hand and walked forward slowly. Protocol demanded she kneel. Walter guessed, but she just stood there, small and defiant and terrified all at once. Father, you live. Thank the ancestors. You live. There was emotion there. Walter realized, buried deep. Controlled but present, Draven loved his daughter. He just didn't know how to show it in a way she needed. I am sorry for disappearing, Lyra said formally. I brought dishonor to the family. Dishonor? Draven stood, descending from his throne. You brought terror, fear. I thought you dead, child. I thought I had lost you as I lost your mother. Lyra's composure cracked. You never showed it. After mother died, you just worked. Meetings, treaties, duties. You never cried. You never spoke of her. It was like she never existed. The court officials murmured in shock. Such directness to the king was unheard of. Draven stopped walking for a long moment. He said nothing. Then I grieved in private, as is proper. But I needed you to grieve with me. I needed to know I was not alone in my pain. Lyra, I ran because I was drowning and no one noticed. I ran because I would rather die alone than suffocate surrounded by people who told me to be strong. When I felt shattered, the silence that followed was crushing. Walter watched Draven process his daughter's words, saw the realization dawn in the king's eyes. He'd failed her not through malice but through cultural blindness. Walter cleared his throat. Every eye turned to him. Probably shouldn't speak to a king without permission, but too late now. Your Majesty, if I may, you are the human who shelter my daughter. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. Walter Hayes, I'm a gardener. Taurus tells me you knew nothing of her identity. Didn't matter to me who she was. I saw a hungry kid who needed help, so I helped. Why? It was the same question Lyra had asked weeks ago. Walter gave the same answer. Because she needed help and I had helped to give. That's what humans do. Draven studied him. You claim no reward, no political advantage. I claim the right to speak honestly, if you'll hear it. Speak. Walter took a breath. This was it. Your daughter didn't run because she's weak. She ran because she's grieving alone in a culture that won't let her grieve. On Earth we learn something important. Humans survive not because we're the strongest or fastest. We survive because we take care of each other. We protect our vulnerable. We allow time for healing. We understand that real strength includes the courage to be vulnerable. You suggest we are wrong, that our traditions are flawed. I suggest that traditions should serve people, not the other way around. Lyra is brilliant, kind, capable, but she's also a child who lost her mother. Both things can be true. The court erupted in angry muttering. How dare a human criticize Drake and culture? But Draven raised a hand for silence. Continue. I don't know your politics or your culture deeply, but I know kids, and I know that what Lyra needs right now is permission to feel what she feels, space to grieve, time to heal. She could be a princess later. Right now she needs to be a daughter who lost her mother. Draven looked at Lyra, really looked at her. Saw her small frame, her scared eyes, her desperate hope that someone would finally understand. This is the human way, the king asked. This is the way of any species that values its children over its image. High King Draven stood, motionless, his eyes fixed on his daughter. The throne room had gone completely silent. Even the advisors had stopped their whispered protests. Everyone waited for the king's judgment. You accuse me of neglecting my daughter, Draven said finally, his voice measured, of prioritizing tradition over her well-being. I'm saying that sometimes good intentions and cultural expectations can still cause harm, Walter replied carefully. You're not a bad father, you're a father working within a system that doesn't account for grief. Our system has stood for thousands of years, and I'm sure it has many strengths, but no system is perfect. Humans had to learn that the hard way too. We had cultures that told men not to cry, that told people to bury their emotions and just be strong. It caused a lot of unnecessary suffering. Before we figured out better ways, one of the advisors stepped forward, his scales bristling. You compare our noble traditions to primitive human mistakes. We are an advanced civilization, advanced in technology, maybe, Walter interrupted, but emotional intelligence, that's where humans excel. We had to. Earth nearly killed us 1,000 times over. Predators, diseases, disasters. We survived because we learned to support each other through trauma. We got good at recognizing when someone was hurting and helping them heal. Emotion is not strength, the advisor insisted. Emotion is information. Fear tells us about danger. Grief tells us about love and loss. Anger tells us about injustice. Ignoring emotions doesn't make them go away, it just makes them control us in ways we don't recognize. Lyra spoke up, her voice small but determined. I tried to be strong like you wanted, Father. I tried to ignore the pain, but it grew bigger every day until I could not breathe. Running away was not about weakness, it was about survival. Draven descended the final steps from his throne, standing level with his daughter. For the first time, I thought I was protecting you after your mother died. I thought showing strength would help you be strong too. It made me feel alone. The king's shoulders sagged slightly. To the court, it might have looked like weakness. To Walter, it looked like a father finally allowing himself to be human. Well, Dream, whatever, I miss her, Draven said quietly. Every day I miss her, but a king cannot appear weak before his people. Why not? Walter asked. Why can't a king grieve? Because the people need stability, certainty. They need to know their leader is strong enough to guide them through any crisis. But you just went through a crisis. Your wife died, your daughter disappeared. Those are legitimate crises. Showing that you're affected by them doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. It makes you someone people can relate to, trust, believe in. Torres stepped forward. If I may speak. Your Majesty, Draven nodded. I have served the royal family for 30 years. I watched Princess Lyra grow from hatchling to child. In these past 3 months, I have seen our empire nearly tear itself apart searching for her. I have watched you work tirelessly, refusing rest, driving yourself to exhaustion. I knew you grieved, but I never saw it. None of us did. Perhaps the human is right. Perhaps our strength will be better demonstrated through honest emotion rather than its suppression. The throne room filled with Murmurs, some agreed, others protested. Change was never comfortable, especially for cultures with long traditions. Draven looked at Walter. What would you have me do? I cannot simply announce that everything we have done for centuries is wrong. You don't have to. You just have to start with one thing. With one person. Walter gestured to Lyra. She needs to know she's not alone in her grief. She needs to hear that you miss her mother too, that it's okay to hurt, that healing takes time, and that's acceptable. And if I show this vulnerability, the court will see weakness, then the court needs better education, but start with your daughter. The rest can come later. Draven knelt down, something Walter suspected kings rarely did. He was eye level with Lyra. Now father to daughter rather than ruler to subject. I failed you, Draven said. After your mother died, I tried to maintain order, stability. I thought that was my duty, but my greater duty was to you. I'm sorry, Lyra, I'm sorry I made you feel alone in your pain. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You miss her every moment of every day. She was my heart, my counsel, my light. Without her, I am diminished. I merely pretended. Otherwise, I miss her too. I miss her so much it hurts. I know, daughter, I know. Draven opened his arms and Lyra collapsed into them. They held each other while the court watched in stunned silence. A king grieving openly, princess crying without shame. It was unprecedented. Walter felt his own eyes sting. This was good. This was right. This was what healing looked like. After a long moment, Draven stood, keeping Lyra close. He addressed the court with new authority. We will establish a new tradition, he announced, effective immediately. I am creating a cultural exchange program with humanity. We will learn their methods of emotional processing, of supporting children through trauma, of building strength through connection rather than isolation. The advisors erupted in protest. Your Majesty, this is too hasty. This is necessary. My daughter suffered because we had no framework for addressing grief in children. How many others have suffered silently? How much potential have we lost because we valued stoicism over well-being? But to learn from humans, who better to learn from? They survived a death world through cooperation and emotional intelligence. Perhaps there is wisdom in their approach that we have overlooked in our pride. Draven turned to Walter. You will serve as advisor in this matter. You will teach us your methods. Walter blinked. I'm just a gardener, Your Majesty. I don't know anything about formal education or cultural programs. You knew enough to save my daughter when our entire empire failed her. You knew enough to challenge a king in his own throne room because you believed it was right. That is exactly the perspective we need. I don't even know where to start. Then start where you started, with Lyra, with patience, kindness, and space to grow. Walter looked at Lyra, who gave him a small smile, the first real smile he'd seen from her in front of others. Okay, he said, but I have conditions. Lyra doesn't return to the same environment that hurt her. She needs time to heal properly, real time, not just a week or two, and she needs to be involved in decisions about her own well-being. Agreed, and I'm going to need my greenhouse moved here. Can't teach about growth without actual plants. Draven actually smiled. That could be arranged. 6 months had changed everything. Walter stood in his new greenhouse, twice the size of his old one, on Station Amara, watching the sunset through reinforced panels. real sunlight. This time not artificial, they'd built the structure on the grounds of the royal palace, visible from the throne room windows, a daily reminder of new priorities. Lyra worked beside him, pruning tomato plants with practiced hands. She'd grown taller, her scales brighter and healthier. More importantly, she laughed now, real laughter, not the careful sounds of someone afraid to express joy. These ones are ready, she announced, holding up 3 ripe tomatoes. Should we use them for tonight's demonstration? Good idea. Nothing teaches better than actual results. Tonight they were hosting another session with young Drac and nobles, children of court officials and military leaders, teaching them what Walter had taught Lyra, what humans had learned over millennia: how to recognize emotions, how to process them healthfully, how to support each other through difficulty. That it had started small, just Lyra and her father learning to talk openly about grief. Draven had been awkward at first, centuries of conditioning fighting against vulnerability, but he persisted for his daughter. He learned to say things like, "I feel sad and I miss her, and this is hard for me." The court had watched their king transform, watch him become somehow more authoritative through honesty rather than less. People respected his strength differently now, saw it as deeper and more genuine. When you admitted pain and worked through it, you proved you could handle anything. Other families had noticed, quietly at first, then with increasing interest. They'd approached Walter. Could he teach their children too? Could he help them process the losses and pressures they've been trained to ignore? The program had grown naturally from there. What started as informal garden sessions had become an official cultural exchange, human emotional intelligence integrated into Dreen education. It was slow meeting resistance from traditionalists, but change was happening. Taurus entered the greenhouse, now a regular visitor. He'd become an unexpected ally, using his military authority to defend the program when critics called it weakness. Training. Hayes, Princess, the students are arriving. Thanks, Taurus, we're almost ready. The general lingered, watching Walter arrange vegetables on a teaching table. I must admit, when I first found the princess in your greenhouse, I thought you were either very foolish or very brave. I did not expect you to be both. Walter grinned. I just grow plants. Taurus, you're giving me too much credit. You changed an empire with vegetables and kindness. I think history will give you exactly the credit you deserve. 10 young Dreen filed into the greenhouse, chattering nervously. They were all around Lyra's age, some younger, children of privilege who'd never been allowed to admit struggle or fear. Walter recognized their carefully controlled expressions. He'd seen the same look on Lyra months ago. "Welcome back, everyone," Walter said warmly. "Find a seat wherever you're comfortable." They settled among the planters, some sitting on sacks of soil, others on overturned buckets. Informal, casual, nothing like the rigid court protocols they were used to. "Today, we're talking about growth," Walter began. "Real growth, not just plant growth. Lyra want to show them." Lyra held up 2 tomato plants. One was lush and healthy with ripe fruit. The other was withered, barely alive. "This one," she said, indicating the healthy plant, "got water, sunlight, nutrients, but also rest, darkness for recovery, space to grow at its own pace." She lifted the dying plant. "This one got constant light, no rest period. push too hard, too fast, it cannot sustain that intensity. A young drain raised his hand. Hesitantly, but intense training makes us stronger, does it? Walter asked, or does it just make you exhausted and unable to grow further? There's a difference between challenge and harm. Good stress builds strength, bad stress just damages. You picked up a seed. When we plant seeds, we don't dig them up every day to check if they're growing. We give them time, proper conditions, and trust the process. Same with emotional healing. You can't rush it. You can't skip steps. You have to trust that if you provide the right environment, growth will happen. Another student spoke up, a girl with green scales. My father says emotions are distractions, that leaders must be above such things. Emotions are information. Lyra responded before Walter could. Fear tells us about danger. Sadness tells us we lost something important. Anger tells us something feels unjust. If we ignore that information, we make worse decisions, not better ones. The girl looked skeptical but interested. Walter spent the next hour teaching through plans and patience. He showed them how to recognize stress in themselves and others, how to ask for help without shame, how to support friends who were struggling, how to sit with difficult feelings instead of running from them. That it was simple stuff, really, basic emotional literacy that humans taught children, but for these young Draken, raised in a culture of stoicism and strength, it was revolutionary. Near the end of the session, a small boy approached Walter privately. Can I ask you something? Of course. My brother died last year in military training. I am expected to honor his sacrifice with strength, but I just feel sad all the time. Is that wrong? Walter's heart ached for this child. No, that's not wrong. That's grief. It's how love continues after loss. Your brother mattered to you, so his absence hurts. That's beautiful in a painful way, but I should be strong. You're being strong, feeling your feelings and keeping going. That's incredibly strong. Pretending you're fine when you're not, that's just lying to yourself. The boy's eyes filled with tears. Can I be sad here? Is that allowed? Yes, you're always allowed to be sad here. This greenhouse is a safe space for whatever you need to feel. Boy cried quietly while Walter sat with him. No fixing, no rushing, just presence. The other students watched, seeing maybe for the first time that emotional expression didn't make someone weak, it made them real. After everyone left, Lyra and Walter cleaned up together in comfortable silence. Draven appeared at the greenhouse entrance. Nightly ritual. Now he came to see his daughter, to talk about their days, to maintain connection. How was the session? He asked. Good, Lyra said. Cairn finally cried about his brother. That is progress. Indeed, his father will be pleased, will he? Walter asked pointedly. Draven smiled slightly. Yes. Actually, General Cairn attended one of my leadership sessions last week. He is learning slowly that emotional awareness makes better commanders. He wants his son to have tools he never had. Change. Walter thought, slow but real. Father, Walter says next month we should visit Earth. Lyra said to see human gardens and schools to learn more. An excellent idea. I will arrange it. Draven stayed while helping water plants while they talked. A king doing manual labor with a gardener and his daughter 6 months ago. Unthinkable, now normal. Later, after Draven left, Lyra looked at Walter. Seriously, you know what you did? Yes. Taught some gardening. You changed how We understand strength, how we treat children, how we process loss. You changed everything. Walter shrugged. I just shared what humans figured out. That we're stronger together than apart. That vulnerability is courage. That growth requires both sunlight and rain. Is more than that. You saw a hungry child and chose kindness. That kindness saved me. Then it saved others. Then it started saving a whole culture. Well, when you put it that way, I guess I should have charged consulting fees. Lyra laughed and hugged him. Thank you, Walter, for everything. Thank you, kid, for trusting me, for teaching me just as much as I taught you. They stood together in the greenhouse, surrounded by growing things and possibility. Outside, the Draken Empire continued its slow transformation. Inside, a human gardener and a dragon princess planned tomorrow's lessons. Kindness, Walter had learned long ago, was like seeds. You plant it not knowing what will grow. Sometimes you get tomatoes, sometimes you change worlds. Either way, you keep planting.